This video covers everything we did today in 7th grade math on Tuesday, January 25th. Today's learning target is I can divide positive and negative numbers. Let's take a look at our first activity on slide 2 of ClassKick. 11.1, tell me your sign. Consider the equation negative 27x equals negative 35. Without computing, and that means without doing the math, is the solution to this equation positive or negative? So I want you to tell me in the text box, is the solution positive or negative? And then question 2 says, are either of these numbers solutions to the equation? And you can circle one if they are the solution and cross them both out if they're not. Go ahead and pause this video and take a minute or two to try 11.1. You should have tried 11.1 on your own. Let's take a look. We know that the solution to this equation is positive. The reason is because I'm multiplying a negative times something to get a negative. And remember that I know negative times positive equals negative. If x were a negative number, we'd be multiplying a negative times a negative, and our solution would be positive. I also know that I have the solution to the equation here, 35 over 27. Here's the reason why. If I were to write this out, I would have negative 27 times, and actually, I guess I could just write it right in front of this value. Let me show it to you this way. Negative 27 times 35 over 27. Now remember, when I'm multiplying a whole number times a fraction, I can either multiply my whole number times my numerator and leave the denominator the same, or I can think of it as 27 over 1. So I know that I am multiplying 27, negative 27 times 35 over 1 times 27. But because I'll end up with a 27 in my numerator and a 27 in my denominator, those two cancel out, and I simply end up with a solution of negative 35. Notice that 35 over 27 was a positive number because we knew that we needed to multiply a positive in order for our product to be negative. Let's take a look at 11.2, multiplication and division. Find the missing values in these equations. The question marks are the missing values. I want you to go ahead and pause this video and try question 1 on your own. So pause the video and try question 1. We know a negative times a positive is a negative, and so we know that negative 3 times 4 is equal to negative 12. That means that in B, we're multiplying 3 times 4 to get 12, but we're multiplying a negative times something to get a positive, which means we know question mark needs to be negative 4 because negative times negative equals positive. In question C, we're multiplying a positive times something to get a positive, so we know our missing number also needs to be positive. Notice that the way I'm thinking about these questions is I'm first identifying whether each product and factor is negative or positive. So if I'm multiplying a negative times a positive, I know that my answer is going to have to be negative, and that's how I got negative 12. In part B, I knew that I was multiplying a negative times something to get a positive, and I know that negative has to be multiplied by negative to get positive. That's helping me find out what the question marks are equal to. In D, I know I have to be multiplying negative times negative to get positive. And in E, I know that I have to be multiplying negative times positive to get negative. Remember, a negative times a positive will always have a negative product, and a negative times a negative will always have a positive product. Now, in question 2, it's asking us to rewrite the unknown factor problems as division problems. Here's an example. The unknown factor problems are B, C, and D, because in A, the unknown is the product, not the factor. I know that when I have a product and a factor, product divided by factor equals factor. And so I can take the product that I know, divide it by the factor that I know, and calculate the other factor. So notice that I can take 12 divided by -3, and my missing factor will be -4. This is for question B. In question C, I can take my product, which is 12, divided by the factor I know, which is 3, and my missing factor is +4. Notice that the answers to my division questions, -4, -4, +4, +4, match the answers to the missing number questions. These quotients, the answers to the division questions, are simply the missing factors. I want you to pause this video and write a division sentence for D and E. So your directions are to pause the video and write a division sentence for D and E. You should have tried the division sentences for D and E on your own. The key takeaway from this activity is that we can determine the missing product or the missing factor using a division sentence. And looking at the signs of our numbers, are we multiplying a negative times negative, a positive times negative, and so on, helps us to determine the answers. On slide 3, it asks you to complete the sentences. A positive number divided by a positive number is always blank. A positive number divided by a negative number is always blank. A negative number divided by a positive number is always blank. And a negative divided by a negative is always blank. Go ahead and pause this video and answer these 4 questions on your own. Division and multiplication follow a similar pattern. A positive divided by a positive is always a positive. A positive divided by a negative, so when we have one positive and one negative, our solution is always negative. And the same thing is true if we flip it in the other direction and we're dividing a negative by a positive. But if we have a negative divided by a negative, our solution is negative. And so we're following the same pattern that we use with multiplication. The last thing I would like you to do is try question 4 on your own. Han and Claire walk towards each other at a constant rate, meet up, then continue past each other in opposite directions. We'll call the position where they meet 0 feet and the time where they meet up 0 seconds. This right here is a 0. Han's velocity is 4 feet per second, and Claire's velocity is -5 feet per second. Where is each person 10 seconds before they meet? And where is each person -10 feet from the meeting place? I want you to give question 4 a try independently. That's the last thing you need to do in ClassKick today. There is a lesson summary on page 4 that you can read over just to review what those division and multiplication rules are. They're all listed out here. When you're done with question 4, the only other thing you need to take care of today is studying for that benchmark test. So please make sure that you completed the benchmark study guide in Delta Math and that you've emailed me if you have any questions.